Hi, it's time for an Intercom video. 60 years ago last month, something revolutionary happened in the world of NuTone intercoms. NuTone introduced the all-new model 2561-2562. And this is an original catalog from that introduction. And it says here on the front, cheer up with NuTone music systems. And she looks pretty happy, don't you think? In 1963, actually the actual date according to the catalog is March 15th, 1963, you could order and receive a brand new model 2561-2562. What are the differences in the model numbers? Well, back in those days, different finishes had different model numbers. So let's briefly review the new features, because this is what you'd be looking at if you were in a NuTone showroom in March or April of 1963 and you were building a new house and you wanted to put in the state-of-the-art Jetsons intercom system. So you have independent intercom, turn off music at any station and still send or receive intercom only. Answer intercom without walking to a speaker. Music is silenced when the intercom is being used. That was a revolutionary idea. No outside controls needed for door remotes. No more Fuller brush salesmen walking up to your front porch and talking to you inside your house. Walls act as infinite baffle for finest sound. Low voltage permit frames instead of A boxes. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Easiest system to install, uses 8-wire cable wired station to station, not back to the master. That was a time and labor saving idea. It turned out not always to be the best way to go. And yes, you could wire it directly back to the master if you chose to. Plug-in B unit removes easily for servicing. Yes, it does. Trouble-free transistors, no tubes to replace. Yeah, transistors, they were mostly trouble-free, but not completely. Lowest cost operation, uses much less current. How many people know what that means, current? It uses less electricity is what it means, but current, that's a little bit technical for 1963 for most people. Twice as powerful, twice as sensitive, generates no heat. Permits at least 16 remote speaker stations. I've never understood why they say things like that. Permits at least 16. How can you have at least 16? You could have a maximum of 16, but at least 16? I never understood that. That's like when you read an advertisement and they say, get up to 25% off or more. That doesn't make any sense either. A truly balanced system, less noise pickup. That's because this is the first model NuTone made. This was an 8-wire system and it was 4 twisted pairs. And twisted pair, although in today's world seems pretty common because everybody or a lot of people know about Cat5 data cable and things like that, networking cable, which is all twisted pair. This was the first intercom system that used twisted pair wire to help reduce electrical noise it would pick up from your electrical system in your house. Meets the EIA specifications for a high fidelity frequency response. Okay. Largest master station speaker, 6x9 or 9x6. Sealed in metallic finish, can't corrode. Well, maybe they weren't thinking 60 years ahead. Automatic frequency control prevents drifting. It has AFC for your FM tuning, so you can tune your radio station, switch it over to AFC, and it won't drift off of station, which was fairly common in early FM tuners. You had a wide range of remote stations you could pick from. You had 5-inch inside remotes. You had 8-inch inside remotes. That refers to the diameter of the speaker cone in the stations. You had what they called breakaway panels, which are the control panels out of an 8-inch station that could be mounted in a bezel on the wall and used either for ceiling speakers or for outdoor patio stations. This is a 2573, which is an 8-inch outdoor aluminum grilled patio station. And then you had the 2571, which was your entry door station. So you had a lot to pick from. It was a revolutionary system, and it should be looked upon with a lot of respect because it was a revolutionary design at the time, something that was far and away better and more advanced than what other companies could offer you. It was a very popular model. In fact, it was popular enough that it was in production in one form or another all the way through the end of 1974. To further celebrate its 60th anniversary, we should introduce this. Here we have an original new old stock model 2561 that was made in 1964. So it wasn't the very first production, or perhaps it was, and it was towards the end of 1963, so it's got a 1964 date stamp on it. That's all lost to history, and it doesn't really matter. This is actually truly a new old stock unit that's never been installed. I bought it from somebody online. It's in its original styrofoam end caps. It's got its original plastic bag. It also came with its original owner's manual and the original installation kit that came with it, which includes mounting screws, the two mounting brackets that get attached to the wall housing, which would have been put in during construction, and it's comprehensive and easily followed 2-page installation instructions. This is all you got in 1963 or 1964. This was felt to be enough information that the average person could install this on their own and hook it all up and have it work. Was that true? I don't know. The owner's manual is nice, and of course it has the traditional hanger cord, because when you're done with your installation, you're supposed to loop this around the knob so it's hanging underneath the unit. So when the lady shows up in her brand new house, she's got an owner's manual waiting for her. Very nice. The owner's manual is very nicely made. It's heavy duty paper. It has a lot of really good photographs in it and clear explanations of how everything works, because it was a feature-packed unit. And while in today's world you might think, oh, that's simple, anybody can figure that out, you have to remember, this is 1963. It was a different world in those days, and you needed good instructions to get the most out of the system that you just bought. So let's go ahead and open this up and take a look at it. We'll put the styrofoam caps over there. We'll take it out of its plastic bag. And here we have probably the world's nicest 2561 that I've ever seen. Because I don't see a lot of these that are new. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen any of these that are new. This is by far probably the first new old stock one of these I've ever seen. I see a lot of broken ones. I see a lot of beat up and dirty ones, but I don't see a lot of them that look this good. So here on the side, you can see right here, it says H64, H being the month, 64 being the year of manufacture, and down here you have the data label right there, and it says model 2561, 2562, serial number 61-13030. How far into the production does that serial number make this? I don't really know, because I don't think that they made 13,030 of these at this point. That would be a lot, although maybe they did. I don't really know. It could be that the one is just sort of a throwaway number, and this could be the 3,030th unit that they made. There's no records, there's no one to ask anymore, so that's all lost to time. It has some basic information here. This being an early model, there are actually, we'll put this sort of upside down here where you can see, down in here where I'm pointing, where it's really hard to see, there's actually a fuse holder, and that fuse holder holds 2 glass fuses. These are actually the glass fuses that came out of there. And here on the side it says fuses are AGC 2 amp fuses, and it says if dial lights are out, check both fuses. Well, that makes sense. Dial lights, there's one here up in the top, and there's another one here on the side that's really hard to see. It's right there. And they have something that's sort of a 1964 version of duct tape, it looks like, that's kind of wrapped over the top of the bulbs. You can maybe see it right here. And that's helped reflect the light down across the radio dials instead of out through the back where you would see it shining through the crack of where the faceplate meets the wall. So that was the 1963 way of doing things, I guess. This is clean, 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 clean. Oh no, it's upside down. All the electrons are going to fall out. It's clean, clean, clean like I've never seen. I've worked on some fairly nice used models, but I have never seen one that's as in good a condition as this. Even all of the control switches, which are down in here and here and here and here, are the surface contacts of the switches are still relatively clean. There's no oxidation, there's no grime or dirt buildup or anything like that. So I think maybe just a little bit of light cleaning at some point and they would come to be just like brand new. Same thing with the two intercom lever switches here. These snap back nicely as they should, which you almost never see on a used unit. And of course, the silver plastic faceplate is pristinely perfect. The knobs are shiny and there's no grunge in the little grooves from people's fingers from turning the knobs for over 60 years. And the tuning dials move very nicely. One of the things about this model is the AM tuner, when you turn the knob, you're turning the tuning shaft for the variable condenser, which is right in here. And if you look really carefully, right down here towards the bottom, you might be able to see the fins fold back and forth as it opens and closes. So on the AM, when you turn the knob, you're turning the tuning shaft, the shaft of the variable condenser, and moving the fins directly. On the FM, it works differently. This has a friction shaft, so it's an outer tube with a shaft that fits through it, and there's friction between the two pieces. So as you turn the knob, you're turning the inner shaft, which then causes the outer tube to rotate also. And the reason they did that was because tuning FM is more precise. You have to go just to get it tuned in properly, and that gives you better resolution as you turn the knob. But what happens to these, especially when they get old and dirty and worn, is you can turn the knob and the shaft in the middle slips inside the tube, and so sometimes you turn the knob and you're turning it, and maybe you're turning it twice all the way around, and the dial is barely inching along because there's too much slip in it. And that can be a problem. It's a difficult thing to solve. Those type of parts aren't made anymore. So either you have to figure out how to service it and get it to work properly again, or scavenger another one off another set. On the bottom, you have your auxiliary input jack, where you could plug in a phonograph, which was the auxiliary item of the day. You also have an input jack here on the back of the unit, so you could wire audio cables in directly. And then there is a low-level radio output. I'm not sure why the radio output was included, because in those days they didn't make any separate amplifiers, so there really wasn't an easy NuTone way to set it up as like background music in an office or something like that. Later on, they did come out with a reel-to-reel tape recorder, and I suppose you could hook this to that and record off the radio, but I'm not sure people ever did that. I've never seen anyone do that. Maybe it was something that was planned for and they never really finalized how that was going to be used. After I received this, it sat on the shelf for a while because we were really busy at that time. Recently, I had a chance to get to it and take a look at it, inspect it, and so forth. And I decided, well, you know, it's new old stock, which I'm always very skeptical of. It's nice how well the volume controls turn. I decided, well, let's hook it up and see what happens. So I did. I hooked it up to my 2561 test setup, which is 2 inside remotes and a door station. Powered it up, turned it on, and immediately blew one of the fuses. So the fuses are for the input. This uses a specialized transformer. It's a 20-volt center tap transformer, which means that the transformer has 3 wires. You have the left, you have the center, and you have the right. If you measure left and right, you get 20 volts. If you measure center and right, you get 10, and center and left, you get 10. So the fuses are on the left and the right, 1 fuse for each. The fuse blew immediately. I hooked it up, bypassed the fuse with an amp meter, and it was drawing maximum amps, which means somewhere in the set there's a problem. Is that why this is still in its original package and never been installed? Was it a unit that was bad out of the box on the day it was made, and some installer took it out to someone's house and hooked it up and turned it on, popped a fuse, and it's bad? And in those days, I'm pretty sure that if you had called your NuTone sales rep, he would have immediately driven over to you and dropped you off another one because they didn't want any kind of problems, especially with a new model. However, I don't think that that's actually what happened here. If that had happened, one of the fuses would have already been blown. The installer wouldn't have blown a fuse and then like, oh, I blew a fuse and then put another one in. No, he wouldn't have done that. I don't think this was ever actually installed, and most likely what's actually wrong with it is it has failures in other components because it's 60 years old. I did take a moment and I pulled the two output transistors. There would be one here and one over here to check them and see if they were shorted, because that would be something that could happen and that would cause an overload and cause it to blow fuses. Those turned out to be fine, and I do need to put them back in. But I have them packaged up and put away with this right now until I get to this. So I think probably what's happened here is that in the primary power supply, which is this board here, and underneath it, there are two multi-section capacitors. These are the primary filter and power supply capacitors for the entire master station. And somewhere in here, something has shorted out completely. You've also got these big, chunky, old school diodes here. What's amazing about this is, in technology today, is that these diodes, which were made in the early 60s, do the same job as modern diodes do today, which are now the size of a grain of rice or smaller. So that's how much smaller things have gotten. So the question is, what's wrong with it and what am I going to do with it? Well, what I'm going to do with what's wrong with it will be discovered as I work on it, and what I'm going to do with it is I'm going to rebuild it, because it's a good model and it deserves to be installed somewhere in somebody's home, whether it's a replacement unit for one that's missing, or perhaps we've had people over the last 5 or 6 years do new vintage installations and are looking for something like this to put in. Sometimes it's in their man cave, sometimes it's part of their mid-century modern house and they want that cool vintagey look thing like that. It'll find a home at some point or another. When that will be, I don't know. I'm curious as to what caused the fuse to blow. Rebuilding one of these and modernizing it somewhat is not a terribly time-consuming thing to do, especially because I don't have to overcome all the grunge and dirt and wear and tear and things that happens to a unit that's been in use for 60 years. This one's all pristinely clean and nice to work on. I may not even have to wear gloves when I work on it, because it's not dirty at all, which is really nice. We should all stand up and salute and applaud NuTone for creating the 2561-2562, a revolutionary model from 1963. I hope you found this interesting, and maybe for someone in some way it will be helpful. If it is, give it a thumbs up on YouTube, because that helps us just a little bit. There'll be a banner right here that shows you how to subscribe. Go to our YouTube homepage, click on the bell, and when you click on the bell, click on it to receive all notifications. And every time we post a new video, you'll get a notification and you can watch it. That's all for today. See you on the next video.